Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second day of the semi-finals in the Magnus Carlsen Invitational, part of the Champions Chess Tour. Going into today, Jan Nepomniachtchi has a 1-0 lead over Magnus Carlsen, and Anish Giri has a 1-0 lead over Wesley So. That means that Wesley and Magnus need to win the rapid section, and then they need to win either the Blitz or the Armageddon. And so, I will kick things off in the match between Wesley So and Anish Giri. Now, I'm just going to preface this game by saying the first 3 games were draws. Some of them were tense. They were, more or less hard fought, but nothing insane. So it's 1.5 after the first 3 rapid games, and we go to the 4th rapid game. We get e4, and Wesley plays e6. Now, Anish Giri has a French defense core, so it's kind of funny that Wesley plays the French. At this point, Wesley must win. So, d4, d5. And if you need to play for a draw with white against the French defense, you would think that you would just take. Because after takes, I mean, you have a completely symmetrical position. Then you could play knight f3. There's a lot of different ways, but Anish plays the advanced French. And Wesley plays bishop d7, knight c6, and knight e7. This is a very standard way of development. There's a... Sorry, what was that? That's not a knight levy. The pawns have a little bit of attention, right? So knight a3, you say, what the heck is Anish doing? That's so disrespectful. Well, he wants knight a3 and knight b5 and knight d6 mate. Now, he doesn't get 3 moves in a row, because in chess, you get 1 move and then your opponent gets to move after that. Welcome to Gotham Chess Recaps, where we review the rules every now and then. The other idea is that when that gets covered, you also want to bring the knight back to c2. In fact, he does that right now, and that's another way of supporting the center. It's a bit better than putting the knight here, where the bishop would be kind of blocked. So we get takes, bishop e7, castles, bishop d2, and rook c8. Now, bishop d3, lining up the bishop this way. So we get f6 from Wesley. This is a very common pawn break. Whenever you're lacking space in any position, you should really try to look for where your pawn play can occur and your pawn breaks can happen. Pawn takes, and now bishop takes. So now that pawn could be a target. So that bishop c3, so that square, that fights for that square in front of the pawn, trying to not let the pawn make any forward progress. Anytime you have a pawn and it's not guarded by any other pawns, and it cannot be guarded by any other pawns because they've all kind of went past it, if that pawn is not able to move forward, that is called a backwards pawn. So right now, white can clamp down on that and then line up the attack. But Wesley plays queen b6. He's going to try to create counterplay, queen d2, and bishop takes f5. A big decision by Anish, trading the bishop for the knight. But what this does is it negates black's pawn play. And again, I keep making that term. If black cannot really, break or trade anything, pushing pawns here will be risky, and pushing pawns here will do nothing, because I'm fully equipped to fight you. So now we get knight e5, knight c6, and rook e1. He's just trading pieces. Then Anish played rook e2, and then Anish played f4. Now, f4 is a very committal move. Why? Because you push all these pawns, your bishop's kind of stuck behind your pawn, and this e4 square, I mean, imagine black somehow, by some miracle, puts a rook on that square. It's going to be very annoying because it's going to be very well protected. But because white dominates the only open file, again, in all closed positions, and, ones that are mildly open with 1 or 2 kind of spots opened up, if you dominate the only open file, you're going to have the advantage, which is why even with this trade, the more pieces you trade, the more it's going to, closer it's going to get to an endgame. But then Anish played this move, and after bishop e6, he played g4, which is very bold. That's a very bold move, and it's a very bold move because you're pushing pawns where you're castled. And if black plays something very solid like g6, maybe Anish wanted to go, I don't know, g5, and then here's kind of an example of how you might lose by accident. Queen h3, queen h8, you just infiltrate. That could be very dangerous. So here, Wesley played the move queen c7. And I guess his idea was to go here or here and hit the rook. And Wesley missed. And you could try to find it here while I take a sip of my basil ginger lemonade. Got this from a Vietnamese place nearby. It's the cool thing about New York. If you're hungry, you have 20 countries that you could potentially travel to for cuisine. But if you'd like to find the tactic, please do go ahead and try. I should pause here because I'm about to tell you the answer. So, rook takes e6. Because after rook e6, queen f5 check. And Wesley's last move with the queen removed the guard of the rook. Wesley just blundered. Just one move blunder. If he hadn't played that, here the machine was trying to say, go for a queen trade, Wesley. Because if queen takes, rook takes, then black is doing very well here, actually. Black just activated the bishop. This is a weakness. So queen a6, and Wesley could have maybe tried to play for some advantage, but he just played one move, and Anish took on e6, and Wesley resigns. You say, Levy, that's so anticlimactic. I can't believe I've been watching this for 5.5 minutes, and that's how it ended. I know, we felt the same way, but don't go anywhere, because you still don't know if Magnus Carlsen got eliminated or not. All right? So with that, Anish Giri knocks out Wesley So, and he's our first finalist. That's amazing. I mean, I'm not saying it's amazing because Wesley's eliminated. I cheer for Anish, you know? I root for Anish. So anytime Anish has success, I'm happy for him. And now we move to the match between A1 Magnus Carlsen and Jan Nepomniachtchi. And this match, this is a crazy match, this one. So the first game of this match today ended in a draw. That's just the first thing that I want to say. First match ended in a draw, 50-50. And it wasn't a very eventful draw. I mean, not a lot happened. So now for our second game, Magnus Carlsen has the white pieces, right? He plays the move d4. Jan again plays e6, not something he normally plays. And then Jan plays this. Now, if you're going to start the game with knight f6, e6, then against knight c3, it's a very high chance you're going to play the Nimzo-Indian. But Jan plays this. After takes, bishop g5, this is known as the advantageous version of the Queen's Gambit exchange variation. And normally, black plays c6, bishop e7, but Jan mixes it up. He plays the move bishop b4. Now, according to theory, this is not considered the best move. Queen a4 check forces knight c6. No one's losing a piece. e3, Jan plays h6. Now we get takes, and knight e2. Jan plays castles. And here, the easiest way to play this position with black is to take, and you have to play this very important move, knight e7. And what that does is it allows you to play c6 and kind of make a solid structure. Okay? So that's exactly what happens. And Magnus castles, and, you know, Jan obviously continues developing toward that side of the board, and you see he's kind of lurking. He's kind of looking over here, you know, give him a couple moves, he's going to start an attack. b4, Magnus starts an attack on the queen side. Jan says, hello. Oh. Well, I'm threatening mate. What are you going to do about that? Ah. Well, I now have a target, and I am going to go for that target. Wait a second. I thought Magnus Carlsen just stopped this by opening up his rook. Jan says, I don't care. Queen f6. Magnus says, okay, I got to push my pawn. It was hanging, so now it's not hanging anymore. So Magnus is up a pawn, but here Jan plays something. I mean, this is just peak Jan right here. Not developing his bishop, not developing his rooks. c5. Sacrificing another pawn with a tempo on the queen, and now bishop b7. And what bishop b7 does is it pins the knight to the king. Magnus plays bishop f3, unpinning. We get take, rook d8. Now a simplification and this position. And some short while later, rook g5 attacked. There was another trade. And here's the endgame. It's 2 rooks, knight, and 3 pawns for Jan. 2 rooks, bishop, and 4 pawns for Magnus Carlsen. But Magnus has what's called pawn islands. They're all separated. These are double H pawns. They do not scare anybody. But there's a little bit of pressure here. And the only way to deal with this is to create counterplay. Rook b8, threatening to infiltrate. While Magnus is threatening to infiltrate on his own terms, win a7 and promote. But still plenty of life, so we get king g2, rook b3. Jan rolls up with the rooks to hit the e-pawn. We get this. Now king f8. It's not threatening to bring the king yet, because the king's cut off, but in the future. And here, Magnus Carlsen got hit with f6. Now he's got a question. Does he trade the rook, or does he go forward? At this point, Magnus's time is ticking. It started at about 4 minutes each, but now his time is ticking, and he's down to a minute on the clock. Okay? And he plays rook e6. Now, what rook e6 does is allows black to not even take, but to activate the knight. The knight is now activated, and when time is low, knights are so tricky. So we get h6, sacrificing the pawn to deflect the knight, and now infiltrate with the rooks. The problem is, Jan is first. And now Jan gives a check, king f4, and rook f2. So if you take my knight, I'm going to take your bishop, with a check, and then I'm going to win your pawn. It's very scary because one of us is going to get to the other with the rooks. Okay? Rook a7 played by Magnus Carlsen, though. He doesn't take the knight. King to g6. Now he plays this. Now, if you look, there's no threat. He's not actually threatening to take that, and he's also not threatening to push because the rooks and the, you know. But here Jan Nepomniachtchi finds the only move. And the only move in this position that wins is king h6. Because if you take my knight for free, I don't take your bishop with check because then your king runs. I take the pawn first. And now your king is in a mating net. If you take, it's mate. You are covered. It's completely checkmate. And Magnus plays king g4, rook f3, and resigns. And now Magnus Carlsen trails after losing with the white pieces 1.5 to half. Here's the situation. You got to get 2.5 out of the next. You have to get 2.5 out of 4. 2 games are done. So Magnus Carlsen has to win the next 2 games to force a blitz playoff. Here we go. We go to game number 3. Magnus plays the Sicilian defense and plays a weird move order with queen to b6. Now, queen b6 isn't popular. There are multiple ways to get advantage. Jan plays knight c3, a6, and what this allows black to do, is to drop back the queen. You say, why would he do that? Why wouldn't you just, and here's the thing. If you play a6 in this position, one of the most annoying lines to deal with when you play black is c4. c4 clamps on all of your pawn breaks and makes the position extremely annoying. There's also bishop d3, which is a main line. So Magnus move orders Jan back into this line with an extra move a3. And he's basically saying, look, I know this is bad and a3 is not the best move, but at least I got something that will be confrontational. And it was confrontational because a short while later, Magnus Carlsen played the move h5, which is obviously not standard for the Sicilian. So we got takes, and now bishop f4. Plays e5, bishop c5. It's a very non-standard position. Looks super strange. We get queen f3, d6. Magnus just says, yo, take it. Take it, bro. Let's go. I don't even care that, go ahead. Go get this position. Come on. Jan thinks for a while, doesn't really like the look of that. So he plays h3. Now, bishop f6, bishop g4 was really the idea there. He wanted to play bishop g4. That would deflect the queen away from the f6 square, and the game goes on, which is why Jan plays h3, knight d7. Magnus plays knight d7, knight f8. Obviously, that knight is coming to e6. Takes, and now h4. Knight b6. Rook attacks knight, knight moves. Castles, wait. He didn't guard this because it doesn't really help. Because the rook, right, the queen and the king can't guard a rook, if the knight is there. So he just chucks the pawn, takes on b2, and goes queen b8. Now, throughout this game, computer always gave white advantage, but that doesn't mean anything. You have to, oftentimes, if you need to win with black, you gotta create chaos. The engine will not support you. The engine's gonna be like, dude, that guy is crazy. I don't know what that dude is doing. I don't support any of this. But we're human beings. Knight f5, rook b5, knight e7 check. Now the king moves. Now here, Jan can play queen f3, threatening queen h5 mate. But if you do that, you get hit with this move, which is why you always look for checks, even for your opponent. I know Jan not doing that. I guarantee if you were in a game, you would go, I could go here and here, I'm so smart. And you get hit with this move, you go, oh! Well, you gotta minimize those blunders, so that's why we get king h2, knight back to f5, and queen to d2, queen f2, and Jan a few moves later played queen e2 to try to go for queen h5. But Magnus played bishop e6, said, come and get me. Jan said, okay, I will, and I'm gonna bring my friend too. Magnus thought down to 30 seconds here, and played the move queen e7. After rook h4, f6, e5, it looks like Magnus is on the verge of defeat. Bishop e4 coming in with these 3 pieces is almost game over. It's match over. Jan played the move queen e5. We got takes. And here Jan played rook e4, which on the surface looks very good. It looks like black has to guard the bishop with the, like this, and then check, and then back and draw. But Magnus Carlsen said, wait a minute. My name is Magnus Carlsen. I didn't just realize that, but for the purposes of the example of the Gotham chess recap video, I'm Magnus Carlsen, D3. Take my bishop, bro. Take it. Okay. D2. Okay, we rolling. Okay, we rolling. Okay, we rolling. I don't think he said that 3 times out loud, but look at this. How do you deal with this? Here, Jan had to find check, king moves, and bishop drops back this way. This is the only way, because after rook to b2, you have this, and if c2, you just take it. And the problem here for black is that although you're a move away from promoting, you can't move the rook. The rook guards the pawn. It cannot go here and then promote, and my rook guards from the back, and I'm good. Side defense isn't going to work. So, Jan didn't play that. Jan played king h4, and Magnus got his winning position, like this. You say, how's this winning? The constant threat of the promotion and sacrificing the rook for the bishop to remove the guard of this. He didn't go from the other side. And because of that, he marches in his king, rook f3, queen, and a few moves later, Jan resigned. And in stunning fashion, Magnus Carlsen said, I ain't done. 1.5, 1.5. I gotta win this next game, and even if I do, all that does is force blitz. But here we go. It is 1.5, 1.5, and we go to our final rapid game of the day. Magnus Carlsen with the white pieces. Plays e4. Jan goes for the patented Najdorf defense. Now here Magnus plays like the 9th most popular move, a4, basically stopping b5. Now it's been played recently, and then we got h6 from Jan. That stops bishop g5, a very common idea to remove the knight from the defense of the d5 square, which is where the Najdorf is won and lost. We got g3, bishop e7, bishop g2, castles, castles. And Magnus came up with a very cool idea here. He played the move knight h4. And he played that move because he wants to put his knight on f5. He has evaluated that trading the bishop for that knight will open up his bishop, and he'll have advantage. And Jan just said, okay, so do it. So do it then. But sometimes when you say, so do it then, you don't realize just how good your opponent's position actually is. Now, there was some suspicion, you know, from that last game that Jan was still maybe a little bit tilted, which obviously does happen. You're so close. You're so close to sealing the result. But white is clearly better here because of the spatial dominance. I mean, you've got these absolutely monster bishops. Again, the Najdorf is won and lost on the d5 square. If black can't play d5, the bishop on e7 will be very passive. So white dominates here. And here, Jan went for this break, b6. Destabilizing the a-pawn, but jumping in with the knight. Here, Magnus thought for a while, just played knight d5. Because after queen d8, b3, kicking out the knight, even if you take my bishop, I take. And after we simplify the knights, which, I mean, for example, like knight takes d5, bishop takes d5, or like that, this position is just completely winning for white. How do you evaluate who has a better position? Material, in this case, is equal, although it's about to not be equal because nobody can guard this pawn. But material, king safety, obviously white's king is safer. Piece activity, obviously white's got dominant piece activity. Look at these bishops. This bishop is a god amongst the boys. Look at it, standing in the center of the board. That's an outpost square. The square on your opponent's side of the board that you dominate and you can plant and be active on. It's the worst bishop of all time. I mean, that bishop rented out an expensive apartment only to move in and find out he's got no windows. And that bishop, I just want to tell you something. That bishop never moved again. I'm not even kidding. Watch how Magnus does. He trades the queens. Doesn't matter. Because of how much he dominates this square and his b-pawn's passing. And Magnus just took the pawn, backed up, said, let's go. I'm going to bring my... Look at this. Gotham, you said the bishop never moved again. The last move black made was bishop g7. Rook a1 resigns. Because after rook a7, who's stopping me? In fact, Magnus had an even more savage plan here. He could have played king h3. If takes, king g4. If takes, you have king f5. And nobody can stop you from going king g6 and rook h7 mate. Isn't that insane? You could just go bap, 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 and bap. Crazy, right? Shows you the dominance of the bishops. And ladies and gentlemen, it's match on. Magnus Carlsen wins the final rapid game, coming back from 2 games down, 1.5 half, wins with black, wins with white, all square. So now, It's 1-1 overall, and it's time for some blitz. The first game of the blitz actually looked exactly like the first game of the rapid. It was a very calm game. Nepo tried to, I don't know if that was his game plan or just accidentally, but, and I'm just going to reset this to half-half. They drew their first blitz game, and I was a bit concerned because Nepo had white. I mean, Nepo started with the white pieces. Magnus got to choose because he was the higher seed. So for the second blitz game, Magnus now has the white pieces, which, I mean, Nepo's got to not lose this game, and then they go to Armageddon, right? So if it's a draw, it's 1-1 in the blitz, means they go to the Armageddon, which is 5 minutes for white, 4 minutes to black, and did y'all hear that? That was crazy. Did you guys hear that? Or was that just on my end? My OBS just, like, some alert just went off. That was crazy. Anyway, okay, well, that was exciting. So that's the story. Here we go. D4. Knight F6. We have the same thing that we had before, but this time, it's a little bit more of a barn burner. We get the same thing. We've seen this before. E3. Bam, bam. But here Jan says, G5. Woohoo! Gotham's gonna show this in his recap. I gotta make it exciting. I don't think that's what Jan was thinking. Knight E4. Knight to E2. And Jan says, hello, hello, hello. I want to trap your bishop. Magnus says, yeah, it's not gonna happen. So we get this, H4, Knight H5. Okay, I mean, this looks like two drunk grandmasters playing it out in a blitz game. And what the heck is this? What? It's a parental advisory warning. Some of y'all like to watch this with your sons and daughters. Like, come on. What is this? A bad influence is what they're doing. C6, I like that. All right, now let's preserve our bishop pick. Man, how? Let me tell you, he didn't bring back the bishop because of the move E4. Bishop D6 would be a retreating move, and because Magnus has a lead in development, the position is in his favor to open up. So that's why Jan trades, and then plays Knight F6, they trade, and now we get B4. So Magnus Carlsen has got Queen Bishop, 7 pawns, and 2 rooks. Same for Jan. In fact, they're the same color bishop. So how the heck do you play a position like this? Well, since both sides have 7 pawns, it means the position is more closed. A closed position means what? Pawn breaks. Spots in the position you can open up. So we get A6, A4. See what Magnus is doing? Continues to push, takes. Opened up, you know, the A file, hoping for a rook trade. Here, Queen E6, Rook C1, and C takes B5. Big decision by Jan because, you know, he could have defended his C pawn, but by doing this, he splits up his structure, and Magnus actually plays Queen B3. He doesn't just go take back. He wants to take back like this and then take back later. Jan plays Rook A1, now plays Rook C8. Again, the game is going to be won and lost on the open files. Bishop 2 F3, pressuring the D5 pawn, and here Jan plays Bishop E4. Obviously, I mean, you don't want to lose your pawn. So we get takes. Now it's a Queen and Rook endgame, both sides have a bunch of pawns. Magnus takes on B5. Okay, guys, it's a draw. Let's go. Or, if anybody, hey, Magnus Carlsen's playing with white. I mean, he's got more intact structure. All right, Rook C7. Now here we get Queen B6 attacking the Rook. Queen goes back to defend. Queen A5. Queen D6. Rook B1. King G7. So that on the back rank, you're never hit with a check. Right? So King G7. Queen B5. B6. This is a nasty trap. This is why you don't just take stuff. Look for checks. That would be vicious. And you can't move your king. And you can't take because you would lose your queen. Ouch! That's why you always look for checks. So Queen D3, that's not how the game ends. Queen E6, a lot of shuffling. Queen A6, Queen D6, bop 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 bop. Now it's a queen endgame. And here Jan plays Queen C7 check. And Magnus played King G1, Queen C1, King H2, Queen C7, and they made a draw. Just kidding. That's not what happened. Magnus Carlsen said, I don't want to draw. G3. One of us is going to lose. So pawn takes G3. King G2. Whoa. What? Well, his argument is that if you take, I take with check. And when you move, I don't take this. I take this. This can wait. It's not going anywhere. You try to come in here, I'll take it. And then F1, so what? I'm still up a pawn. So Jan sees that and plays this move, Queen D8, the only move that guards both pawns. Now we get king g3. Now, if I asked you, ladies and gentlemen, in this position, what is the best thing in Jan Nepomniachtchi's position? He would not say the queen. I mean, the queen is the easy answer. What is black's greatest asset in this position? It's the b pawn. It's the b pawn, ladies and gentlemen. All of a sudden, Magnus is like, wait a minute. But then check. King f3, b4. Whoa. Hey, Jan, chill, Jan. It's all good, Jan. You don't gotta, Jan, it's all good. Queen b, okay. You can't, look at this, look at Jan. He's like, hey, Magnus, take my pawn. Take my pawn, buddy, so I can push. Magnus is like, nah, I'm good. I'm good, Jan, h4. Sacrifice, I'm gonna go get the pawn back. Queen b5, king h4. Let's go, Jan, relax. Relax, Jan. We don't gotta do it this way. We don't, Jan, it's fine. Jan, relax, we don't gotta. Okay, so that's a very annoying move because after takes, you're not going to stop my pawn. So Magnus plays queen a4. He's trying to go check from the back, but we got... Wait, Jan, relax. Jan, stop. Jan. Oh, God. Oh, God. And using the queen as a barrier and opening up just the right amount of squares, Jan finds a way to escape perpetual check, which is the only danger in the position for him. And now queen e2. And because the king's strayed too far from the pawns, queen f2, b2, that's exactly what happens. And ladies and gentlemen, in this position, after b2, Magnus Carlsen played queen a6. And the idea of queen a6 is that maybe in a time trouble with 15 seconds on the clock, Jan would miss it and would accidentally promote. Maybe that was the idea, or maybe Magnus meant queen a7 and he slipped. But queen a7 wouldn't have helped, because after check here, this queen just comes back to b5. And after queen a6, queen takes a6, Magnus Carlsen resigned. And Jan Nepomniachtchi defeated the world champion to claim the overall match 2-1 and advance to the final to play against Anish Giri. Bet you didn't think that's how this video was going to end, given that momentum. What an insane day. Magnus comes back and then loses the second game of Blitz with the white pieces. Jan Nepomniachtchi 2 times now, 3 times in this match, defeated Magnus with black. And Jan is currently leading in the candidates, which is a classical tournament, and the winner of that tournament determines who plays against Magnus Carlsen in the next World Championship match. Many of the new chess fans might not know that that tournament is currently paused halfway, because it started and then coronavirus happened. So, hey, what a crazy turn of events. And tomorrow we begin the finals. Anish Giri versus Jan Nepomniachtchi. And for third place, Magnus Carlsen and Wesley. So we did not think we'd be seeing those guys fighting for third and fourth place. But, man, that's just how it goes sometimes.